I'll see if I can talk a little bit about the UAP disclosure stuff that we've been having recently in the news, or I guess for the past like 50 years or whatever, there's been stories like this, and now recently we're getting U.S. military disclosure hearings from supposed witnesses and stuff, and people that are supposedly whistleblowing on military government operations that have insider knowledge of UAPs, that say a lot of these sightings are real and cited by the military, and that there are these unidentified aerial phenomenons that look like little tic-tac pills or saucers sometimes, and basically defy physics and hang around nuclear facilities and this and that. Well, for the past 50 years we've had stories like this, but it was always reserved for the conspiracy theorists, the wackos and stuff like that. But now, with the recent disclosure stuff, it kind of complicates the issue to me, because basically now it means that there's one of two strange things that are happening. One is that it's actually, there are aliens or whatever, or unidentified, that this phenomenon is real, basically. And that is like a whole can of worms, opens up a lot of questions and stuff like that. It's pretty strange. And then the other option is that it's some kind of military government psyop, or just a psyop in general by somebody, right? Trying to convince the populations that these things are real for some reason. And that's less clear to me why, like, who would have something to gain from something like that. But that's why it's like a fun or interesting conspiracy. It's just because you have lots of ways to look at it, lots of potential options, and all of them are sort of insidious. Like, basically there's a conspiracy no matter what. There definitely is something going on. Either it's a whole big psyop, which is a conspiracy in itself, or it is true that there are these weird things that have been covered up and now it's a conspiracy and now it's coming to light, right? So it's pretty strange. I acknowledge that there are things that are like wildly beyond my human understanding. Like, I'm basically agnostic about God and religion and anything like that, but I'm also agnostic when it comes to these like metaphysical ideas of like aliens. Just basically I acknowledge that there are things that are completely beyond my understanding, and that I can't write off the possibility of extremely bizarre things existing and influencing our world, right? Not to say that I believe that they exist, I'm just saying I can't entirely discount that possibility, just like I can't entirely discount the possibility of there being some God or something like that, right? But I have no evidence for it either, so that's kind of stands in the way of me believing any of these things wholeheartedly. I kind of stay agnostic about all this stuff, and this alien stuff included. It's easier for me to believe because I know this to be true, that humans are capable of like evil and deception and all this kind of stuff. So it's more likely, I think, that it is some kind of weird human psyop to control people, to influence public thought somehow, right? Whether it's just like making people more fearful, more whatever. I kind of settled on the idea recently that, because for a while I was entertaining both possibilities, but I think now I definitely lean more towards the idea that that is fake. And my theory for why, or for what the purpose would be in that case, is that there's a group of people who are pushing this, whose goal it is to just increase credulity among especially the Western world, but the human population in general. And these people probably just want people to be a little bit more prone to bullshit in general, So you increase credulity, meaning like people are more likely to believe whatever fanciful ideas you tell them, whether it be like aliens, religion, or state propaganda, or just random disinformation in general. Make people, more likely to believe just a random meme or a Facebook post than any other thing, or whatever. Just make people more credulous, less skeptical in general. And and I was just trying to think like what kinds of people would be behind this, right? Because it could be a lot of people or whatever, but I notice a lot of the people involved in this kind of alien world, right? Like the people who talk about it, the people who promote these ideas. Like there was a YouTube channel I came across called, I think maybe Jesse Michaels was, I could look it up after, but anyways, this guy is like a Silicon Valley looking guy. I have to look into it more, but apparently he was employed by some Silicon Valley company in tech, right? And he's very like interested in tech and these kinds of ideas. He loves Elon Musk, right? This kind of person, like a tech bro kind of guy, right? And he'll have on lots of like alien people, and he's sort of on his channel building this brand narrative of aliens and surrounding this alien disclosure stuff. So he'll have people on that supposedly have credentials in the U.S. military or CIA or whatever, but a lot of the time I watch the videos and they just kind of seem like nut cases. Like they'll be talking about all this stuff you're supposed to take them seriously, but then they have stories about getting abducted by these aliens and stuff like that or whatever, and it just ties it all into this huge grand conspiracy that ties in with like metaphysics and all sorts of other stuff. There's a guy called Chris Langan too, who has this whole metaphysical narrative of basically trying to scientifically prove the existence of God, but through a metaphysical framework that to me makes it seem sort of a little bit unlike God. But when you actually look at what he believes, he does believe in the Christian God, right? But his metaphysical framework of God doesn't seem like God at all. It seems like a sort of more universalist, like everything is one type of thing, like the universe is God, which is like a sort of abstract way of looking at it that I can sort of resonate with, like everything is everything, so you can kind of describe everything as God. And that sort of makes sense to me in a certain way, but it's not really the same thing as the Christian conception of God as like this sort of like external thing to the universe, who sort of dictates and creates and controls everything about it, right? But whatever, he manages to make it work. And basically my whole point in that is I notice a lot of these people who believe in the alien stuff tie it into this like sort of weird metaphysical Christian reframing of things, right? So the aliens aren't really just aliens, they're like metaphysically angels or demons or something like that, right? Sent from the fourth dimension and whatever. It's scientific proof of like their religion. And then I also went down another rabbit hole of like basically there's a video by some autistic girl whose name I forget, who was basically talking about the history of autism and like star children from the Pleiades, which was an interesting video, and I learned a lot that I didn't know previously about how Nazis had basically they had some wacky ideas too, which is like, sure, yeah, right, like they were evil, but they also had like crazy, wacky metaphysical ideas that sort of predated Nazism and inoculated the minds of Germans to be sort of open to this kind of thinking. And that idea was basically that, not that they were Aryans, Germans themselves, but that there was an ancient race of Aryans who were basically aliens from the Pleiades, which is a constellation of stars in the sky, very far away, right? And the Pleiades, whatever, the Aryans were from the Pleiades, and they founded Atlantis on Earth, and then Atlantis got basically destroyed, right? And the Aryans, or whatever, the Germans are the descendants of the Aryans, and through enough like interbreeding and like purity culture or whatever, and getting rid of the impure races, maybe the Aryan race could like resurge again because they've got these Aryan genetics seeded in their DNA, right? The Germans. And so obviously that was an idea that was like really dangerous and allowed them to commit like mass genocide eventually, right, by dehumanizing these other people. But and yeah, the video that I had watched by the autistic girl was basically talking about how a lot of the time there's actually some autistic people that are like involved in these kinds of like magical thinking and stuff like that. And there's a phenomenon that exists now where there's like a lot of autistic people or just other people who will call themselves like star children, right? From the Pleiades. So it's a very similar idea where they also believe some of this metaphysical, mythical mumbo jumbo, and they basically believe that they're souls from this star constellation, the Pleiades, who have like come to Earth, and they're like beings of light and happiness, and in some ways also they're like the only true souls, right? They're like the chosen ones, and everybody else is like an NPC. They're not really real people or whatever. So you can see how these like ideas can lead down some really weird, dark, dangerous places. And anyhow, I just felt like the alien stuff sort of ties in a lot of this stuff all together, like within its mythology or ideology. And yeah, I don't know. So my conspiracy theory, I guess, is that it's like sort of the Elon Musk tech bro class of people that are spreading this shit. Because he's like the richest guy in the world, right? He's autistic. He believes some wacky shit about population theory. He believes that his genetics are superior, right? Because he thinks he's got a huge inflated ego. He thinks he's like, a super duper genius, right? He must be smart in some ways. Like a lot of autistic people are, right? They've got like their strength, but he's like Kanye West, right? Where he's got real legitimate talent in an area, but then he sort of starts to get this like huge inflated ego where he thinks that he's the best at everything and just the best in general, right? Where like you saw with Kanye West, he was like, I am a god, right? And I think Elon Musk has the same sort of conception because he literally, compared to the likes of us, is a god, right? With just the amount of wealth that he has. He's got unimaginable wealth. He's got more wealth than certain countries, entire countries have, right? In his pocketbook. So, whatever. So it's gotten to his head, I think, and he's starting to have these ideas, especially now that he's getting into politics like this, where he's trying to buy his way into elections. He really feels like, first of all, that he should be the one in charge, right? Because of his like, his ego and whatnot. He thinks that his genetics are like special, and he's the super genius. And by virtue of his genetics and genius, it just sort of makes sense that he should be in charge of all the plebeians that are like not as like advanced as he is, right? So it's a little bit of like a neo-fascist idea or whatever. Like he wants to be a modern king. He wants to have that power. He wants to just take it all, right? And so especially also the way that he's taken over like Twitter and weaponized that clearly to make propaganda, or to not to make propaganda, but to control the sort of like media landscape, to sort of perpetuate propaganda. and sort of control public thought. Like in a way, his buying of Twitter was a psyop in itself. It was a psychological operation to influence the minds of people. And in this modern age, in democracies, the minds of the public is like prime real estate to be colonized by ideas, right? To sort of corrupt the state from the people, right? So when you've got, like, in Western institutions, you've got constitutions, you've got democracy, you've got all these checks and balances, right? That supposedly make it, strong, and you've got all these fail-safes and stuff like that. But one of the ways that I think totalitarians, so the people that, like, Putin and Xi Jinping and totalitarians around the world, Saudi Arabia, Elon Musk, right? These people know that the flaw of democracy is the people, right? Because everybody's on social media, and social media is a very controllable, or just the internet, is a very controllable landscape that very wealthy, powerful people can influence with bots and AI and just moneyed interests and all sorts of stuff. They can influence the internet, and because everybody now is connected to this internet hive mind, that's like prime real estate to colonize the minds of people who live in Western democracies. And so these people spend a lot of money, and, like, he's losing money on Twitter, but he's gaining money, and he's gaining immeasurable value from X now, right? Because of its influence on the minds of people, and how you can create consensus, and you can basically suppress news that you want and promote news that you want, and that's what basically makes it into the minds of the people. And then you can corrupt the government that way, right? And so I think that there are these like Peter Thiel groups and Elon Musk types, and I don't know how organized they are or how, like, disparate and ambitious they all are individually, but I think that this is basically the group of people that are spreading this stuff about aliens, but also a bunch of other stuff. Aliens is just one little aspect of it, right? To increase credulity, increase division, and basically just corrupt the minds of democracies, to erode those institutions from within, and basically sell out these countries to kleptocrats like, in my opinion, Trump and Elon Musk and all these other billionaires and trillionaires or whatever, who just want to, like, enrich themselves, increase their own power individually, right? It's not about the nation as much as it is about themselves. And anyways, that's what I think is going on. Let me know if you disagree in the comments or whatever. Kidding around, but yeah, I don't know. I still have to think about it more, but that's sort of what resonates as more true to me. But I wanted to believe in the alien stuff. I thought it was sort of comforting in a way, because if you believe that it's true, then it's like a religion. You can start building other narratives in your head that you can hope are true or believe are true, right? Like this idea that everything is coming to a head, right? Now, everything right now is coming to a head. This world is not sustainable, and we're like about to drive off a cliff, right? Is what I think a lot of people who pay attention sort of feel like, right? Like everything is going to shit. The world's on the brink of war. You got like economies on the brink of collapse all over the world. Everything feels like we're on the brink of collapse of American empire, first of all, which is what has sustained the world order for a while. And now we're going into a position where America is collapsing from within and abdicating the responsibility to the world order that they created. And so it's like everybody is looking, and it's like, oh shit, okay, they're collapsing, Rome is collapsing. Everybody, it's time now to like scramble for the pie, right? And get the biggest chunk for the new world order, right? Who will come up on top? Is it going to be China, Russia, whoever else, right? But right now is the time for everybody to scramble to get their stuff. And even Trump realizes that, right? He's eroded America from within, and he knows that the world order that currently exists is eroded or will erode completely because of his actions. Maybe he doesn't connect those dots, but he knows that the world order is collapsing and that this is a time to scramble for the pie. And Americans know this, like I'm talking about like the billionaires and people like this. They also know this. And they also want a bigger piece of the pie, right? So they're gonna basically get themselves in a position where international norms don't matter, which is what we're already seeing, right? You know, you can start to invade countries, which you haven't seen before, like Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You're gonna have all sorts of wars pop up. China's probably gonna go for Taiwan. You got stuff heating up in Israel. Israel's going to make more land grabs for all the territories around it. Every country that has claims or designs to conquer other parts of the world, which is like basically every country, is going to start acting on this. And America, that's why you've got Trump is floating these ideas of like taking Greenland, which is important geopolitically, and in a world where there is no international rules and everything does go tits up, right? I can see a position where Trump does start looking at these other places for invasions and land grabs and whatnot, right? So it's pretty fucked up. It's very scary, but that's the world we're living in. And I'm just trying to connect the dots to some of this other bullshit that's going on in the news, which is like basically it's just distraction from their death, right? I think when you look at even the connections between, like, Elon Musk has had conversations with Putin, right? You look at Trump and how friendly outwardly he is to totalitarians like even fucking Kim Jong-un, Xi Jinping, Erdogan, Putin, especially Putin, right? He's got nothing but good things to say about him somehow, right? Oh, I respect him. He's like, it's because he sees another strongman. They're like the same fascist archetype from history. These are the same psychological sort of like blueprints of a person who wants that kind of power and attains that kind of power and what they want to do with it and how, right? And Putin is kind of like an expert in eroding democracy because that's what he did in Russia. He was elected, right? But then he sort of like totally took apart Russia's system from the inside, right? Because he's got a lot of power. So he cracked down on the press. Tell me if that sounds familiar, right? So there's no more press freedom in Russia. It's completely state controlled. Cracked down on like legislator. He started putting in like a lot of loyalists in every position of power. Tell me where that seems familiar too. You can see Trump doing the exact same thing. So I feel like Trump is basically looking at these dictators from history and also from contemporary times to sort of learn the blueprints of how to do a similar thing in America. Because it was done in Russia already. You look at Russia today and 20 years ago, and it's not the same Russia. Russia had an election to elect Putin, but every election since he was first elected was not a real election because he eroded completely the institutions that are democratic in the country, right? So it's like, it's pretty scary. And I think a lot of the ways that they do that in Russia even is just through like these sensationalist propaganda stories, right? Where you just blatantly lie about anything. And the people is just their media environment is so controlled that they've got nothing else to believe, really. They don't, so I don't know. Very, very pessimistic outlook on the world right now, for sure. But, it is what it is. And anyways, believing in aliens or whatever is one of these things that, like, removes the responsibility from the people to do anything about it. Same as religion sometimes can, right? Like, if you're using religion as a framework to believe something, or especially to be a good person, right? So, like, if you're using the Christian framework, there's a preacher I started watching that I sort of like. I'm not religious myself, but I like religious topics. And He's a reverend from Halifax, I think, and I'll put his name if I can. But anyways, I really like his outlook, and people like that, and a ton of other religious people, I'm sure, use religion more just as a moral framework to really take good lessons away from it. Like, I like the stories of Jesus, right? I think that he is a good role model, even to an agnostic like myself, right? When you read the Bible and see there's like pretty clear morals to be taken away from like a lot of Jesus's stories, right? Like, you know, he looks like just some broke dude, but he is also God in a way, right? So first of all, don't judge a book by its cover. And the main message of Jesus, right, is to love thy neighbor and just to love in general, right? That's his job, you know, and to forgive. Like, he forgives. That's the other thing that's like really huge about him, right? And obviously there's a huge disconnect between like the way a lot of American evangelical religious people sort of treat their religion compared to like Jesus, right? Like, Jesus is a lot more all-loving than a lot of these evangelical Republicans who sort of preach to hate thy neighbor and love Trump, right? Which is disturbing that so many people have like not bothered to read their own holy book or understand it, I guess. But whatever, this is just my own understanding, or yeah, my own interpretation, I guess, right? But I do think it's more correct sometimes than theirs is. But my point was just basically that believing in something, for some people, it's a useful thing. Like, they just they use it to love people and to take away a sense of morality and purpose in life, right? And I think that's good. If the sort of responsibility still falls on you at the end of the day to be good, and that's the point of religion, is to prompt you and incentivize you to be good, the best you can be at all times, then I think that's religion at its best, right? Doing what it's doing good, right? But there's also a way that religion can be used, which is basically to abdicate responsibility. So it's either putting responsibility on you, which is the good way, or it allows you to abdicate responsibility because God is all-knowing and God has a plan, right? And God will basically determine what happens at the end of the day anyways, so there's no responsibility on you, right? Because he's got a plan, and you just trust the process, trust the plan, you know what I mean? It's out of my hands. Jesus, take the wheel, right? So this whole alien thing, I think, can be used in this similar way, and is explicitly, maybe cynically, this is my conspiracy, being used in this way to make people abdicate that responsibility like that. And so I'm sure that these people, that if I'm right, that there is a group of people that's spreading this stuff, these kinds of ideas, then they're also spreading these kinds of ideas within religion and elsewhere, just within ideology, all over the place. But basically it's trying to get people to abdicate their responsibility to change things, right? So, oh shit, the world is going to hell in a handbasket, but I can't do anything about it, right? First of all, that's like the idea that I think is bad, that they're trying to promote. They want to get everybody's individual power down, everybody's responsibility down, so that nobody does anything about the fact that they're stealing everything, right? So, yeah. And like with the alien thing, just because I didn't really explain how this would work, that they're abdicating responsibility with the alien thing, a lot of the alien sort of mythology that surrounds it is that basically these aliens are like sort of like our keepers in a way, right? And so they showed up when we made the A-bomb. This is like the story of it, right? They showed up when we made nuclear facilities and atomic bombs, and so now they're sort of like activated and checking us out to make sure that we don't destroy everything. And so there's like these people that say that they've gotten like alien visions and visitations and stuff, and that basically like in 2027 or something, Iran is going to try and nuke something or other, and the aliens will intervene, and then they'll show themselves, and it'll be like an awakening, and everybody is gonna be free or whatever, like the rapture or whatnot, right? It's all tied together with this stuff. But the idea is, if there is these aliens that are keeping us, right, then it's an abdication of our responsibility, because at the end of the day, aliens are watching over us anyways, and they've got some kind of grand plan, and they're not going to let us nuke ourselves or whatnot, right? But as like, I guess, a skeptic or whatever, an agnostic, I don't really believe that that's the case. I think that we do have, first of all, the responsibility and the agency. Well, first of all, we have the agency to do something about this, which they're trying to make us forget and take away. And second of all, we have a responsibility to not let this happen and to make the world better ourselves. We are the people who inhabit the earth, and it's our job to make sure it doesn't go to shit. All of us, right? All of us individually have that responsibility. And some people don't think so, and I think a lot of those people, are just selfish. They're interested in their own goals, and they want to just live life to the fullest for themselves, just their own life individually, right? They don't want to plant the trees that whose shade they'll never see, right? Which is like some kind of Greek, or I don't know, some ancient quote, right? Is that I don't remember exactly, but basically that for a civilization to be great and to prosper, people have to plant trees whose shade they will never rest in, right? So it's like our hard work is going to be what's determining the sort of like bounty of future generations, but we will never witness the fruits of our labors, right? But it doesn't mean that our labors are not worthwhile just because we won't see the fruits of them, right? You have to have like a bit more forward thinking than just like our instant gratification at the cost of future generations and just the health of our planet, which I think is something that we've been abdicating. And like our current society and leaders are not planting trees, right? And we have a responsibility to elect better leaders. And in places that are totalitarian, where they have less agency, for sure, right? Like we still have more agency in a democracy than in like, a totalitarian government like Russia or China. But even they still have agency. And, there's a fucking like over 1 billion people in China, and there's like a couple 100 million people in the government, right? If those people, obviously it's way harder. I'm not like, it's hard to do here, and it's even harder to do there. But my point is just, at the end of the day, people still do have agency that is forcibly suppressed by these totalitarian governments. They don't want us to know that we have agency. But we can, if everybody banded together, overthrow these governments and make change, right? Or put people in power who are not as shit, right? But in a democracy, our responsibility is way higher because we have way more agency to keep our leaders in check, right? And to elect people who represent us. And so the fact that we honestly have like abdicated our responsibility to pay attention to politics at all, or to care even a little bit about the future, to actually make sure you elect somebody who's good for the country, right? Instead of electing somebody who is going to like destroy your country from within, which I think kleptocrats and billionaires like Trump are interested in doing, right? Just enriching themselves. I think it's a real abdication of the people's responsibility. Like, the people, honestly, have a lot of blame, in my opinion, for the results of these elections right? When a sort of democracy votes to elect somebody who is that blatantly anti-democracy, it's a little bit on the people, you know. It's like it was on the people, the 30% or so of Germans who voted for and supported Hitler in his rise to power. They do have responsibility, even though they were tricked and misled and whatnot by bad ideas, right? And they weren't inherently evil people. They share a lot of responsibility for allowing this man to come to power. And I think we're living through a really similar time in history right now with Trump. The 30% or so of Americans who voted for him and actively supported him, because only 60% of Americans actually vote and 30% of them voted for Trump, right? That's how little of a percentage of the people actually have to support one of these people is, right? But it's on them for, yes, they were tricked and misled. Like, I think most of them, obviously, they don't think of themselves as fascists, right? Or anything like that. They think that they're doing a good thing to save their country and their, all this kind of stuff, right? Their nation and blah, blah, blah. But the history books aren't going to remember it that way, because that's not what's actually happening. And just because they were misled doesn't mean that they didn't seriously abdicate their responsibility to not be misled, to pay attention, to make sure that you're being, making educated choices and not being run for a loop, right? Like, being stupid, I'll rephrase that. Apathy is immoral when it's that egregious, I think, right? If you're so apathetic about your country and your future that you pay so little attention as to, not even know any of the myriad scandals or like disqualifying things about Trump, right? It's because you've been apathetic. You haven't paid enough attention, simply put, right? You were happy to just get the news from your own echo chamber. You didn't do the work to look into it more, to really research things with a clear mind, thinking about what is good, truly, for our people in the future and everything, right? It's too bad. And there's another group of people, though, that have done that work, but they actually came away with the answer that the good thing for their people is to have this fascist in charge. So there's the two groups. There's the people who are misled and the people who truly, obviously they would dissociate from the word fascist, but they associate with everything that it means. They just don't like the optics of the word. But I don't know. It's definitely disturbing. Almost back in Montreal now. But I don't know if any of that made sense. Hopefully some of it did. It was definitely a bit of a long, winding rant about aliens, fascism, Trump, Elon Musk, conspiracies. But yeah, basically, I think it's a group of oligarchs worldwide, and like, it sounds like a conspiracy. Like, it sounds like I'm talking about the Illuminati or whatever. Like, there's a dark group of like elites that are controlling everything, and this is like a bit of a difference, right? I don't think this was like a realization I had a while back that was kind of a bit of a bummer. And I think that's why people like conspiracies that are like this Illuminati one, where there's a group of people that control everything, and they're blah, 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 blah. And actually, just like what I was talking about before, it's the same thing where it allows you to abdicate responsibility, because, okay, if it's not aliens that control everything, if it's not God that controls everything, maybe it's Illuminati who controls everything. But as long as you have a framework where something controls everything and it removes all your agency and allows you to become apathetic and abdicate your responsibility and agency, right? So those are the bad ideas that I don't believe in. But the thing is, though, believing the opposite, which is something that I do believe and came to the realization of, which is that basically that nobody controls the world, which was a bummer because it means that nobody fucking knows what the fuck is doing. Nobody's in control. Nobody's in charge, and that's disturbing because you're like, well, fuck, we're driving off a cliff. And what do you mean? There's nobody at the wheel. There's nobody driving this car. It's a disturbing realization to be on a plane and realize there's no pilot. You know, the plane's just gliding. Nobody's fucking flying the thing, right? And that's the realization I had because the world is too big. It's too complex for anybody or any group of people to actually control. So even the people that are all the way at the top of our system are still in the grasp of our system, right? Like Putin, for example, he controls a lot. He controls a lot in Russia. He controls a lot of stuff, but he doesn't control the world. He's still a pawn geopolitically. He's controlled by certain things. If he doesn't do a certain thing, maybe he'll get murdered and replaced, right? So he has, in his framework, right, he has to maintain his tyranny. He has to maintain his authority. He has to maintain all this stuff because if he fails, right, he dies. So he's got his own interest to maintain all this whole system around him, right? And so it's the same way with all these people. All the people at the top are still stuck in the rat race. They're just stuck at the top of the rat race, right? But they're still trapped within this whole huge, complex global system that we live in. And that's a bummer. That nobody's in charge. But so that's what I sort of believe in terms of like the sort of Illuminati that I'm talking about is just a group of a bunch of oligarchs and really rich people who all are ambitious and all want to increase their own status and power, but they're not really working together so much. They protect their interests because they're the same class, right? And they've got similar interests. But at the end of the day, they're still rivals. They're still opponents. Like, I don't think that Trump and Putin are like best friends or anything, or that Trump is like, Putin's like puppet and he's just doing everything for Putin. Trump is doing everything for Trump, and Putin is doing everything for Putin, right? And it's the same. And Elon Musk is doing everything for Elon Musk, and Peter Thiel is doing everything for Peter Thiel. Like, all these people are not necessarily like working together with some cohesive goal. They're all just, some of their goals coincide, and they've got a shitload of power. But nobody's fucking driving the ship. Where we end up is just a result of it's the result of everybody's actions, every time the next day that we end up in is a result of every individual's actions all added up. And so all you have control over, and don't let anybody ever take this control away from you, is you have control over your own actions and what you do in the world. And I would hope and advocate for every individual to really do the best they can in their lives to do good, right? And if enough people do that, some small, slight change might happen. And even if it doesn't, at least you've done your part in like a cosmic, karmic sense or whatever. I think that's what religion gets at in a lot of ways, is like, even if it won't change the world, it won't change the world to be necessarily a better place where, all this shit doesn't happen and whatnot, right? We all wish it could be different. It's not. And some people go the wrong way with that sort of moral conundrum where it's like, well, the world is fucked up, it's wolves and sheep, and I want to be a wolf, right? Those are like the Trumps. These kinds of or like Andrew Tate's and blah, 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 right? The people that think it's a dog-eat-dog world, and I want to be the one feasting, right? I just don't think that, even if there is no karmic justice, right? I think everybody should act as if there is, and put out into the universe what they want to receive from it. And, maybe it won't make any difference, and I don't have any particular comfort to offer anybody about, I don't think there is necessarily a heaven or karmic justice, like I said, but maybe the karmic justice in a sense is just your own self-worth, right? And if you are doing truly what is good in the world, then hopefully you are also um, hopefully you're also able to feel good about yourself on your deathbed. You know, like I think a lot of these people won't. Death comes for all of us at the end. And, it's not fun, and I think at the end of the day, your own soul will have to reckon with what kind of life you lived, right? Um, and so you have an interest in making that a worthwhile life, not just one where you satisfied yourself and enriched yourself and made the world a worse place, like a lot of these people are doing. So, anyways, this was pretty rambling. I don't know if I made any coherent points at all. Hopefully, I did. Um, definitely went off track though. Anyways,